Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of MCU Rewatch. This episode, I rewatched Ant-Man. So this episode of MCU Rewatch is going to be a little bit different because I'm not going to be vlogging while I rewatch, because the thing is, I already rewatched this movie 3 times this summer alone. I rewatched it twice in the beginning of summer, and then just 2 weeks ago when I was on vacation, I rewatched it again. So I don't want to rewatch it for a 4th time. I've already seen this movie like 6 times in total. So in this video, I'm just going to be giving you guys a review of the movie. The next episode is actually going to be Captain America Civil War, and that'll be a normal vlog MCU Rewatch like they normally are. But yeah, this video, I'm just going to be going over the good and the bad and just my overall thoughts of this movie. I have a lot to say about this movie, actually. I think this is one of the most underrated movies in the MCU. But before we get into my review, if you guys are new in here and you haven't already hit that subscribe button, make sure to do so you don't miss out on any new videos or whenever I go live. But without wasting more time, let's get right into it. So Ant-Man. I think this movie is absolutely awesome. I'm going to start off with the good for this review. I think the best part of this movie is honestly just the casting of the characters. I think Paul Rudd plays a fantastic Ant-Man. I think Michael Douglas plays an absolutely awesome Hank Pym. I think Evangeline Lilly, I think that's how you pronounce her name, she plays a great Hope Pym, and then Michael Pena plays a great Luis. Just everyone in this movie, all the actors are really good. I really think that that's what carries this movie, are the performances. They all really have to do with the humor side of things. Now, a lot of people will say they don't like the villain in this movie, but I like him and don't like him at the same time. I'll talk about the good of the villain right now, and I'll talk about the bad of the villain later. But I think that this villain being a copycat of Ant-Man, like the complete opposite, like that's something that Marvel does a lot. They've done it with Black Panther. They've done it with basically Iron Man, kind of Captain America with the Winter Soldier. Like they do this a lot with characters, and a lot of people just think it's a cop-out, but I think in this movie specifically it works. I think it works perfectly for this villain only. I also think the dialogue between the villain and the hero in this movie are absolutely awesome. And also Yellow Jacket's suit is so dope. It's basically like Doc Ock, except it's not like 8 arms, I think it's 4, and then like the electricity pulsing through them. That's awesome. Now I want to move on to talking about Ant-Man. I love Ant-Man's character so much. I love him in Civil War as well, but just overall in Ant-Man 1, I think he's a phenomenal character. He's such a small scale character, like no pun intended, he's small, but like, you know what I mean. But like he's a small scale character compared to these other heroes like Iron Man, Captain America. But I really think that that works, especially at the time that the MCU was in that moment. I feel like the MCU is really expanding, and Ant-Man was the first movie that was just like out of everything, you know? Like the Avengers and at the end of Age of Ultron were learning about the Infinity Stones, and then there were other characters like the Guardians already in the cosmic realm of the MCU. But this Ant-Man movie was just, it was so far from all of that it felt really well done because it wasn't relying on the other heroes. And if I'm not mistaken, this is the first movie in the MCU at that moment to actually be the first one that wasn't really like touching the big picture. Like Guardians, yes, that was a solo squad, I guess, like that kind of film, but I definitely think Ant-Man did a good job of separating itself from the MCU. And I felt like the first movie that was in the MCU that didn't feel like it was connected to the greater good of it. All of this stuff is already set up, but it completely ignores it, and that's kind of what I like about it. It just feels a lot more smaller scale, which I really love to see. Also, Ant-Man's character as a whole, like his side characters like Luis and all of that crew, as well as Evangeline Lilly's Hope and then Hank Pym, I think all of those characters revolve around Ant-Man so well, and I think that really creates great action sequences as well as the learning sequences. Most of the second act of this movie was just him learning how to be Ant-Man, and I really love that. I also love the way this movie transitions between stuff, but I'll get into, there's some pacing issues that I have, and I'll get into that later in this video. But moving on, obviously the main thing I do have to talk about is the humor. Michael Pena is hilarious. I love him so much in this movie, and he's awesome in Ant-Man and the Wasp as well. I definitely don't think Ant-Man and the Wasp is the best MCU film, but I definitely think it's overhated. Honestly, I think both Ant-Man films are underrated. I think they balance like good like humor tones as well as dark serious tones as really well. I just don't think Ant-Man and the Wasp does it as well. Overall, like I mentioned before, the balances between humor and seriousness are almost perfect in this movie. I think this is one of the few Marvel movies that's been able to do it. I think Guardians of the Galaxy 1, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, and Ant-Man are three of the Marvel movies that really balance these two tones together really well. Obviously, all the other Marvel movies do it to an extent, but I think these three do it well do it well the most. But yeah, moving on, I think the next big thing I want to point out is just the VFX and CGI. I feel like obviously we're not going to talk about that when it comes to how much we value the movie, but that's just another really good thing about the movie. The VFX and CGI are so well done, especially like that fight scene at the end of the movie on the train in Cassidy Lang's room. I think that fight scene is so cool just because of like the focus shift. Like whenever you see them as super small characters, the background is so blurred out, and so you really get that feeling of how small they really are, as well as just the set design. Like that train scene, like that's so creative. I feel like I never would have thought of that, and every time I watch the movie, it really just reminds me of how good these set pieces are and how creative they really are, because a lot of Marvel movies are just boom boom, explosion explosion. But this movie specifically really gets creative with that entire tone of becoming smaller, just getting to a smaller scale. And overall, I just have to mention the action. I think the action in this movie is absolutely awesome. But I do want to move on to the bad of this movie. Now, I don't think there's too much bad about this, but I think the biggest issue is the pacing. Like I mentioned before, I think it goes through the acts of the movie really well. I think the pacing of just flowing through the acts is really well done, but I just think that the beginning of the movie just felt like 3 to 4 different movies at once. There was so many different vibes. There was like heist vibes, thriller vibes, like family movie vibes, action movie vibes. There's just so much going on, I felt like, in the first act. And then the final act, I definitely felt like it was a little bit underwhelming when it came to the villain side of things, which I will talk about a little bit more in depth right now, because like I said before, I think the villain was great, but there's also downsides to this villain of Yellow Jacket. I think this villain was so predictable. I just feel like the villain's transformation overall was really cheesy and predictable, and just everything just felt forced with him, really. Maybe it's because I felt more connected to Hank Pym, so I felt like they were trying to just push that whole thing of like the villain's jealous of Hank Pym. Like, I don't really understand it. Well, I understand it. I just felt like it was forced, and that's what I really just don't like about the villain. But yeah, guys, that's probably it for the bad section. I really don't have much else bad to say. I probably have some other stuff that I'm just forgetting about, but overall, I think this movie is pretty good. Take what I say with a grain of salt about this movie, because I really just in love with it. I've seen it like 6 to 7 times. I just really love this one, and I think it's super overhated overall. But yeah, guys, that's it for this episode of MCU Rewatch. I know this one was just a review, but we'll be back at it with the movie vlogs with Captain America Civil War. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn notifications on so you don't miss the next episode of MCU Rewatch. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace.